What's popping, y'all? My name is Kenzie Rock, and welcome to the podcast KR Live. So, this week we'll be talking about Writer's Block. Season 2 of KR Live is all about books, as you're aware. And this week we will be discussing the what's, the why, and the how of Writer's Block. But before I begin, a big shout out and thanks to Russia for being my new geographical listener. People of Russia, thank you, salute. And to the people of the United States, most specifically Oregon, thank you for topping up in the chart this week. So, as always, my socials on Instagram are at podcast by Kenzie for the podcast and Kenzie_rock100 for my personal. Twitter, you can find me at KenzieRock100. Snapchat, you can add me at KenzieRock. And to be clear, the rock is spelled as ROCQUE. And let's begin our podcast. So, writer's block. The word by itself actually, it sounds so fearsome, and to some it actually might be just it, but what is it really? Part of why writer's block sounds so dreadful is because nobody ever takes it apart. So people lump several different types of creative problems into one broad category. In fact, there's no such thing as writer's block, and treating a broad range of creative slowdowns as a single alignment just creates something huge and monolithic to people. Each type of creative slowdown has a different cause and thus a different solution. So instead of feeling overwhelmed by the terrifying mystique of writer's block, it's better to take apart and understand it as it is and then conquer it. So there are 10 types actually of writer's block, and how to overcome each type will be discussed here on Care Live, so stay tuned and listen up for more. So for the first one, we will start with you can't come up with an idea as a creative slowdown. So this is the kind where you literally have a blank page and you keep typing and erasing, or just starting and staring at the screen until Angry Birds calls to you. So you'll find that most of the time during writing, I've actually been in this point. I was writing a poem and I wrote the first line and I was like, no, that's not it. So I just erased everything. I stared at the page. I know what to write, but the words aren't coming to me. So I can't come up with an idea on what to write exactly. So you literally can't even get started because you have no clue what to write about. Or you just have a story that you want to tell, but you're just stopped by your own mind before you even start. So there's actually 2 pieces of good news for those in this kind of situation. One, ideas are dime a dozen, and it's not that hard to get an idea palm primed. So execution is just the part that's harder, of which most in a minute will find it easy. But the second good news is that this kind of creative stoppage, where all of the typical do a writing exercise type of stuff actually works. Do a ton of exercise, in fact. So try imagining what it would be like if a major incident in your life had turned out somewhat different. Try writing some fanfic just to use exciting characters as training wheels. Try writing a scene where someone dies and someone else falls in love, or even it doesn't turn into a story. Think of something or someone that pisses you off and write a total mean satire or character assassination. You reverse it later, so don't worry about writing something libelous at this stage. And this is actually one of the easiest problems to solve, because all you need to do is just Look deep within yourself and just write something. Just imagine. Put yourself in this character's shoes if you write a story. Put yourself in this music's persona if you're trying to compose a music. What do you want people to feel that emotion when you're writing, and words will actually just come and an idea will just come to you. So the second type of a story or a creative slowdown is when you have a ton of ideas but can't commit to one of them and they all peter out. So you find that it's actually slightly harder than the previous one. Even this problem can take a few different forms, but there's the ideas that you lose interest in within a few paragraphs, and then there's the ideas that you thought was a novel but it's actually a short story, and then there's the ideas that become, once again, a dime a dozen, but ideas that get your creative juices flowing are a lot more interesting and oftentimes are the coolest and most effective ideas, but they tend to peter out fast, and the dumbest ideas are actually the ones that will get your motor dribbling like crazy. It's annoying, but what can you do? It's with you, and there's nothing that you can actually try to do against it. But with my own experience, that is actually why you end up having all these ideas thrown out. If there is not getting any traction in a specific idea, there is not getting any traction in all of them. So save them in a file. Let's say you just write different pieces of your ideas. If you just decide that one idea you want this to be it, write it down, save it. The other idea, write it down separately, save it, and then come back to them an year or like 2 years later, and maybe you'll suddenly know how to tackle them, either individually or as a package on your own. So you'll have more experience and a different mindset when it's from a future perspective. But when you have the ideas right there on the table and you're just on your own and you don't have somebody else to help you out with, so you find that you have a big battle on your own and you won't have anything to write about. So is there good news? Usually when I'm faced with too many ideas, none of them works problem, I'm a few days away from coming up with the idea that does work, like gangbusters. So your mind is working in an overdrive and it's so close to hitting the jackpot, but you find that it may take time. For some, actually, they just overcome it within a matter of a night. They just sleep and dream about a perfect story or a perfect music piece, and they write it. For some, you actually have to sit down and review all your materials at once. And for some, actually, you just have to toss aside every other material and choose one. So it all depends on you as the writer. What do you want it to be? Do you want to have a story with many ideas put to one? If yeah, combine all of them. If you want your story to be about one specific idea, then sit and review. If you can't come to a decision, wait. Review it a month, 2 months, probably even 2 years later, and you might come to a decision. And if you're one of those that actually just sit and it just clicks to them, then go for it. The first idea that clicks up to you, choose it, write it, and more will come to you as you go on. So the third type of a story slowdown is when you have an outline, but you can't get through this one part of it, so you know exactly what you want, but either in the beginning, the middle, or the end, you can't find a way to write it. You'll find that you know how to begin a story, you know how to end it, but you don't know how to tell the middle part of it. Or you'll find that people know how to tell the exciting part of it and the ending part of it, but they don't know how to tell how it began. And for some, you'll find that they know how to end a story perfectly. They know how it all ends, but they can't tell you how it will all begin or how it will all go on until it leads up to that one specific moment. Some writers work really well with outlines, while some don't. For some writers, the point of having an outline is to have a road to drive off, like a straight line to deviate from as far as possible. Plus, every project is different. Even if you're having an outline fun, usually, there's always the possibility or the probability that you need to grope in the dark for this one particular story. And actually, there are two different reasons you could be getting stuck when it comes to finding the right outline. So, one, your outline has a major flaw, and you just don't want to admit it. So you can get from A to C because B makes no sense at all. The characters won't do the thing that B requires them to do without breaking character. Or the logic of the story just won't work with B. If this case comes to be, you already know it's possible, and it's just a matter of attacking your outline with a hacksaw. So you just need to cut. But for most writers, you'll find that no, I want A, B, C, and D to work out. But maybe if you cut out C and just let your outline be A, B, jump C, go to D, you'll find that your outline will make more sense. And the second reason could actually be that your outline is basically fine, but there's a part that you can't get past because it's boring, or because you just can't quite see how to get from one narrative peak to the next. You have two cold moments, and you can't figure out how to get one cold beat to the other. Let's say, for example, for an instance of you're writing a story about two main characters, you'll find that you have an outline difference in that your outline is great, it's perfect, it's on point, but jumping from one point of life in one character, going to the next, then switching up this other character to fit in with the change in this other character's life, you find that it's difficult just because of one tiny detail. So your outline is fine, but just one minor adjustment could actually fix it all and make it perfect. And in either case, there's nothing wrong with taking a slight detour or going off the tangent and seeing or see what happens next if you try to change the outline of your story. Maybe you'll find a cooler transition between those two moments, or you'll figure out where your story really needs to go next. And most likely there is something that needs to happen with your characters at this point in the story, and you haven't just hit on it yet. So changing and cutting your story in half could actually be your solution. Just open it up, see where the problem lies. It actually could be just a minor thing, but that could help. It could be a minor detail in a story or a minor moment in a story, and that could help change the whole story and bring a better aspect to your story, or bring it to the point that you've always wished it to be. So the fourth slowdown is the point when you're stuck in the middle and have no idea what happens next. So it's similar to the previous one, but in this case it's not the whole outline, it's just the middle part, and sort of the opposite to problem 3. But either way, you don't have an outline, or you just ditched it some while back, and it's something that seems to happen a lot. You were on a roll a day before, you were writing and full of ideas, and you wrote a whole lot of promising development and clever bits of work, and then you just go open your Word document the next day, and you have no idea where this is going. I'm pretty sure you've had that moment, because I have. You just write 12 hours straight. You've been writing and writing, full of ideas, and you're like, "Ooh, I've got this in the bag. But the moment you just close your laptop and come back the next day, you're like, where is this person? Where is this person who was writing yesterday? What was it that I was writing? Your brain just shuts. And it's very frustrating when you thought you left things in a great place to pick up and keep running, and now you don't even seem to know what the next step will actually be. So if it's true that you were on a roll and now you're stuck, then chances are that you just need to pause and rethink, and maybe, just maybe, you back over what you already wrote. So just read back. Just take a moment, pause, rethink. What was it I was writing? Why did I choose to write that? And if you can't seem to figure it out, read back. Just read back. You can even start over from where you stopped the previous day or last time you wrote, and then just read. Slowly read and process and try to analyze and remember why you wrote it. If you've been stuck in the middle for a while, though, then you probably need to do something and get the story moving again. Introduce a new complication, throw dice or twist the knife. So Mark Twain actually spent months stuck in the middle of his book Huckleberry Finn before he came up with the notion of having Huck and Jim take the wrong turn on the river and get lost. If you're stuck for a while, it may be time to actually take a Mark Twain move and change your characters. Let's say your character was living in a very peaceful life. He's supposed to be the hero, or she's supposed to be the damsel in distress, and you just stopped and you're like, no, my ideas won't get that far. Change the narrative, introduce a new thing. Maybe this hero gets to a point where he's not a hero anymore, or he doesn't feel like a hero. Maybe he's now the villain in the story. He turns around, or the damsel in distress actually turns out to be the hero and not the damsel. A twist is all it needs. Just introduce something new to your story, and it will actually bring something very promising to your story, and you'll be glad that you did that. The fifth one is you have a terrible feeling your story took a wrong turn 100 pages back and just hit a dead end. So you find that you've written for months. You've written almost, let's say a novel, you've written 24 chapters, and you're in the 25th and you're like, that's it, no more ideas. There's a huge cliffhanger. You don't want that to happen, but you also don't have ideas to go on or to end your book. And that was because you made a mistake, let's say in chapter 12. That's almost a lot of pages back. Or maybe you were writing a short story and in the beginning you made a twist, and that twist actually complicated the story so much that you can't find a very nice ending or a very good ending that will make readers pleased. And that's why you'll find that in most cases you read books, you read the book, you're excited about the book, and then suddenly it stops, it just ends. There's no series, it's just a one-time novel. There's a huge cliffhanger, you're left with so many questions, and that is because the author did the mistake of making a twist way back. So step 4 can actually lead you to step 5. Step 4 is not that bad. You need to actually get out of your stuck position, but the wrong move and it leads you right to stage 5, where you're stuck in a dead end. It's too late to go back, because going back means erasing a lot and changing a lot of information. Actually, in one of my novels, which I'm actually not done with, but I remember I redid it 3 times. I changed the story 3 times, and I can't tell you how frustrating it is changing a story which you wrote a whole year. You've written 15 chapters. I've actually decided that it would become a series because there's no way of ending it, and that because I made a terrible mistake pages back and I can't go back, because changing it will mean that I'll have to change the rest of the pages, and changing the rest of the pages is actually a huge setback, which will actually or might probably just ruin the whole story. So you'll find that mistakes, horrible mistakes can be made when you change your narrative. And the worst that could happen is that you can see where your story should be but isn't at the moment, and that dreadful error will actually cause you to either erase the whole thing or not write it at all, or you can decide to just publish it and have very, very angry readers. I've actually been at that point where I was angry, very angry at a book because there wasn't a part 2. It was just a huge cliffhanger. I had so many questions of why the character didn't do this instead of what they did, and you don't want your readers to have those type of questions. You want your readers to wonder what happens, but you don't want your readers to be in the situation of asking what if, because what if is a very bad sign when it comes to writing. When your characters ask what if, it's very bad, because let's say your characters love your readers, love a specific character. Your character took a wrong turn in the book, which was your fault as the writer, and you realize it, your readers realize it, and there's no way of turning back because you've already published it. Your editors noticed, and there's no way of turning back because it was in the middle of the book, and you're like, okay, they won't notice. But there are some readers who actually do notice, and they're like, what if character X did A, B, C? Would the story be different? Or if the story would have gone this direction instead of that, would it be different? And you'll find that's why you'll find that there are remakes of books. You'll find that people take the book and remake it into a better version. And if you find there's a situation where the book has been written to a better version, meaning there was an error in the original book, the writer did something that was not so pleasing to the readers, but the new version, they like it, because now the questions have been answered, the questions with which you as a writer. Before you decide to go any further with your piece of writing or any further, then just go back, rewind to the original mistake and start from there. Yes, it might get you stuck again, but it's worth trying. Let's say it wasn't that far back, and that simple mistake, you can correct it and go back to where you stopped and just go on. You don't have to erase everything, then do it. But sometimes, if you can see clearly that your story ought to be like something at some point, you can just keep going on from there, as if you had gone the right way in the first place, then left yourself a giant hole that you could have gone back and plugged in later. You can also rewind partially by going back to the pages, let's say 50 instead of 100, and then pretending that you made the right choice originally. So you can just introduce a very tiny problem in between. Let's say, for example, I'm writing a story about, I'll take a story about one story that we know. What is it? Great, I know one. It's about King Arthur and Camelot. Let's say I was the original author. Here I am, writing about King Arthur. I take this point in life where Lancelot was a good knight, Guinevere was a good wife, and Camelot was a peaceful place. Then I realize, I need something. Then I introduce something in, which is Camelot as a bad person who takes Guinevere. Then I go on and realize, no, this shouldn't happen because it makes the king look weak. So I turn it around again and make it seem like Lancelot made the right choice actually and was saving Guinevere from something bad was about to happen in Camelot. See what I did there? You twist and turn until it makes sense eventually. So you don't generally have to change everything. You just have to go a few pages back, introduce something new, make it seem like this was all planned out and it wasn't like a mistake whatsoever. And in either case, though, beware. You're going to end up with 2 alternate timelines in your story, probably 3, and it's up to you to keep it straight, what happened and what will happen in your timeline, as opposed to the one where you're discarding. So you have to be in charge of everything. Make the readers know this was not a flaw, this was not a mistake, this was bound to happen. Just make them wonder. Just take this situation, take this error and turn it into a good thing. And make it seem like, oh, that was supposed to happen. Or they actually did make the right decision. You see? So you don't have to change everything. You don't have to worry. You don't have to leave your readers in a very, very deep cliffhanger. And you don't have to make your book so bad. You don't have to have a bad ending or a bad story. You just have to introduce something new and make it seem like this was all planned out. Another slow down, it's when you're bored with all these characters and they just won't do anything. So you created these bold, vibrant characters and now you've written dozens of pages, but something about them brushing their teeth and feeding their cats just doesn't make sense to you and just seems even more boring. So let's start with the obvious. Characters who don't do anything aren't interesting characters at all. Either what you've got here are just your supporting cast and you haven't created your main character yet, or you haven't found the thing that your characters really want or the conflict that will spur them into action. You have some characters but not a story. Not yet. Sometimes you have to find a knife before you can twist the knife itself. The good news is sometimes writing a few dozen pages of nothing much happening and just a boring few couple of pages can actually be a super valuable thing. You're getting into the world and you're working out for yourself what these characters are about. It's entirely possible that once you've done that, a conflict will present itself, or one minor character will suddenly start looking like your protagonist. Just be prepared to toss all of these pages after that happens. So you just have to go for it. Make a few boring pages. And then after that, when the story starts to spice up, delete all these boring pages and you're left with something amazing. Just be prepared, and as you possibly will with almost everything in a first draft anyway, keep it. Keep a first draft. I prefer keeping a second draft too before I have a final product because it saved me a lot. Having a first draft, always have a first draft, have a second draft which is actually a backup, and then have your final polished and clean product in the end. A nice, amazing story that doesn't need any changes. It's perfect, if I could say so myself. And seventh problem, you keep imagining all the reasons people are going to say about your story, like sucks and it's bad, and this will actually paralyze you. Thinking about it, it's not that good and it's not advisable. Just write. What if you get 3, 4, 10,000 bad comments? You might realize that you have 3 million good likes when it comes to the book. Don't worry about the comments. There'll always be something bad to be said about everything in this planet. You'll find that you wrote a children's book, but somebody will find something bad to talk about it. You'll find that you wrote an inspirational book, but someone out there will find something bad to talk about it, and that should not be your point of focus. This is actually otherwise known as the inner critic. You are criticizing yourself. You are allowing yourselves to criticize your own personality. You can't make any choices because you just keep imagining how someone at Goodreads or at BuzzFeed will tear you apart some time later because of it. Actually, that person doesn't exist. It's just your own internal critic talking. And you'll need that inner voice of scorn for later when you're revising the book, not when you're writing it. That you have to save it for the final finish. But while you're working on your first draft, you have to drown it out, possibly with a loud finished death metal song. Just write with music. I actually prefer writing with music. I just rock out music in my ear, blast loud music across the room and write. That sense of music around me just clears my mind and pushes back ugly thoughts of someone not liking the book. And when it comes to me now revising the draft that I've just finished, that's when I introduce these critics. Will people like the book? What will people think about the book? When it comes to this generation, what will they think about the book? When it comes to this generation, what will they think about the book? That you're supposed to save it for later, and not when you're just beginning or just continuing with your piece of writing. Chances are that the ideas you're pushing down aren't nearly as bad as your darkest fears tell you they might be. But in any case, you can always fix it by rewrites. Rewrites always fix everything. Although this doesn't mean that you have to be twice as harsh when it comes to revising the thing, or that the bargain you make when you're writing your first quick draft with the eye and revising it later, you just don't have to be harsh about it. You just have to be human about it. Be true to yourself. Even when you're revising it, when you're writing it, just write for you. Write it for someone who is like you. Channel with your characters. That's all you're supposed to focus on. And don't let your mind drift you into the what ifs, because what ifs are supposed to be saved for your final revision only. And those what ifs are also not supposed to take over you when you're revising, because when they take over you when you're revising, you might end up not publishing your work or not showing your work. Some people have written dozens of materials, but they're stored somewhere in a cupboard. That's because they had their own fears within, and those fears actually clouded their mind into thinking that people won't read my piece, or people won't listen to my piece, or people won't like my piece, people criticize my piece. But that is just your fears. Just like any other fear, you have to conquer it. Go out there. If it happens, it happens. It's life. The 8th one, you can't think of the right words for what you're trying to convey in this one specific paragraph. Not in the whole piece, not in the end, not in the beginning, not in the middle, just one specific paragraph. You don't have the words for it. You know what to say, you know what you want to happen in this paragraph, but you don't have the right words for them. And having the wrong words in a specific paragraph can actually ruin the whole story. So you have to sit, think, and have the perfect paragraph for this particular part of the story. And it's actually very, very difficult. And I know what I'm doing when I'm in this situation. I know what I want. I know where I'm going next. And the story is humming along, but I just can't move forward until I find just the right verb, or the right noun, or the right adjective, or the right phrase for this one part of the sentence or this specific paragraph. And I spent a whole day's work writing, staring at the screen, reading pages and pages of the dictionary, trying to figure it out. And it might seem silly to most of you who have never tried writing, but for those who have, no, it's not silly, but just using the wrong words fixes it in the rewrites. You know, you can actually use the wrong words, but when it comes to rewrites, you can actually fix that. And when it comes to this point, I've actually realized that the Grammarly app is actually very great when it comes to writing, because it's helped me a lot. There are times I don't have the right words, but the Grammarly app, when I add the extension to my Word document, it actually helps me to find inspirational words to put into, strong words to build my paragraph, or strong words to build my whole story. So I don't have to rethink it. I just have to write to do whatever words I want. And then when it comes to reviewing, that's when this app comes to get me. And it just helps a lot by helping me out where I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to write. So you might find that you wrote the word amazing several times in a paragraph. But thanks to this app, you can actually find synonyms for this word. And it makes you feel, doesn't make you feel, it actually makes your book feel like it was written by an English scholar. So you might not have perfect English, or you're writing it in Spanish and you don't have perfect Spanish, but when it comes to the reviews, you can actually figure out a way to fix it. But when it comes to the moment you're writing the first draft, don't think about it. If you think about it, you'll actually be stuck in that one specific paragraph for a while. And that's not good. If you're stuck in just one single paragraph, you need to continue, you need to finish it, especially if you're on a deadline. And if this happens, it can actually go very, very wrong for you. Plus, what if this happens during rewrites? There's nothing wrong with spending a day or two fussing over one sentence. It seems, or it may seem like a waste of time, and it may feel like you suck at writing, but actually you're just paying close attention to your writing, and that's a good sign. And to the way you're depicting the scenes, or the storyline, or the paragraphs, or the chapters. If this goes on for a week, though, you just have to pick a specific verb and move on. This is actually something that you should actually focus on for a few hours. Let's say you are writing and you're like, what should I do? What should my character do? Should they jump, or should they strut, or should they just lay down on the ground? You're looking for some verb to make your character's actions look more fitting to the story, but you don't have it. And then you find yourself like a week you're just figuring out this specific verb, or for a week you're figuring out this specific noun you want to put into, or for a week you're just thinking about the whole paragraph. You either leave the whole paragraph, change the whole paragraph, or just pick any verb or noun or any word to fit into it, because it's not great. Like I said, it will end very, very badly for you if you're stuck on there for a week plus. It's actually very sad if you're just stuck on for a week plus. So for my advice, download the Grammarly app to actually help you for this situation. Save it for the reviews. When you're done with the first draft, run it on the Grammarly app, and it will help you make changes and make amazing words out of your little words that you put into your script or piece of writing. The second to last problem is when you had this incredibly cool story in your head, and now you're trying to put it or turn it into words on a screen or on a paper, and suddenly you just go dumb. So is it your inner critic talking, or are you not even sure about the piece of writing? It's possible you're actually seeing a real problem with your idea and your execution, and there's nothing wrong with abandoning a novel and starting afresh. I've actually done that. I abandoned a whole novel, 11 chapters, abandoned it, started a new one, and it's going great. So don't feel bad about it. You can, if you find your story is just blah, just abandon it, start a new one. If you find the ideas later, come back to it. Sometimes these dead half-finished novels serve as great fertilizer for an awesome novel, and you end up writing a very, very nice book because you were stuck in your first one. But don't give up too fast, though. It's possible that part of your idea is just salvageable, or the idea is uniquely cool and genuinely, but you've gotten yourself stuck into a weak execution of it. So just try to find a way to write it in some other direction, because if your idea is genuinely great, don't give up on it. But if you find that it's okay, but you don't know how to write about it, just set it aside, start a new one, and maybe the ideas you set aside can actually help you in writing this other one. And sometimes it's helpful to try writing bits of your story from a different character point of view, and to see how they look from another vantage point. So in writing, you obviously just have to put yourself in the character's shoes so that you develop an amazing story. So if you find that the story doesn't work for a specific character, just try it from another character's angle. What would this other character do? Let's say you have a character named Billy, and Billy was a farm boy who loved to work in the farm and wanted to grow up rich, but there's no way of that happening. And then you find that the story doesn't work out because completely there's no way of Billy getting there. But you have this other character named Michael. Michael is a middle class person, never worked in a farm, but wants to work as a farmer. So you can try from Michael's perspective and see, okay, this person already has money. What if I drop him down, and by dropping him down, maybe Michael will come up? So you don't necessarily have to focus on one character, you just have to switch up the story and use it on another character and see if it works out. And maybe if it does, maybe it might build your other character, and in the end it will build your whole story. So the final problem is not when you're writing, is actually when you're revising your work and you can't see your way past all these blocks of text that you've already written. And revising is actually a huge nightmare. And if you've already adhered to the write a first draft quickly and then fix it in the rewrites, you'll find that schools of thought you've already fallen into a bargain of words, and there's no way of making this process go faster or even more smoothly. And a lot of the time you'll find that while you're looking for your text from different angles or different perspectives to figure it out, where the problem is actually a huge hassle. And sometimes you'll need more feedback from more people to figure out where the real structural weakness is. And this is where you get people to read, like a trusted person to read. If you don't have a reviewer or you don't have a trusted publisher or an editor, you can actually find a close family member or a friend you trust and give them the first draft and tell them, hey, I can't figure out what's wrong with it. I know there's something wrong with it. Can you help me? Read it and tell me what you think might be wrong with it. Okay, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that if you're getting stuck during your revisions, that's not any type of writer's block, as nebulous a concept of writer's block is, but rather just a natural process of trying to diagnose the ails in your novel or piece of writing. Although one thing that works for me personally when I get stuck with my revisions is just to rewrite large sections from scratch without looking back at your original draft. The same story but with new words. Sometimes it's a lot quicker than trying to wrangle the words you've already put down and trying to switch them up and make them new things. So when it comes to revision, just if you can't find the problem, get somebody else to review it. If you can't find trusted people to review it, find an editor who will review your work. If you don't have an editor, then write something new. Not the whole thing though, like where you think the problem might be, take that, without reading it, rewrite it from a different angle with new words. Same story, new words, and try to weigh it out and see, okay, could this work? Could this not work? And if it does, then that's the right pitch for you. But in summary, all I can tell you in general is that when you're writing, take it as an art, because writing is actually a form of art, and like painting, dancing, music, it needs time, it needs precision, it needs focus, it needs perfection. And all this can only be achieved if you know what you need. Do you need music? Use it. Do you need peace and quiet? Find it. Do you need someone to help you? Go get them. But either way, if you want your story to come out as you wish it to be, you have to take that initiative and take that step to realize and accept that there are problems, and these problems are actually solvable. And what we have learned today is actually that writer's block in general does not exist. These are just minor issues when it comes to writing, which people will generally describe as writer's block, but they're actually not that. They're actually fixable, and they're approachable in different perspectives. So for composers, for authors, for poets, whatever sort of writer you are, you have to acknowledge, I am a writer, I am an artist. Art can have mistakes, art can have flaws, and these flaws are fixable, and these flaws are meant to happen. So I hope you learned a lot from today's episode, which was all about writer's block, the who's, the what's, the why's, and the where's of writer's block. If you have any questions, you can follow my socials on Instagram at podcast by Kenzie, which is this podcast's Instagram page. My personal Instagram page is Kenzie_rock100. You can also follow my YouTube channel, which I will do a show about this, which is Unicorn Rainbow, and Twitter, which is Kenzie Rock 100 no cap, and Snapchat, which is Kenzie Rock. And my dears, as I mentioned, the rock is spelled as ROCQUE. Links to all my socials will be in the description depending on where you're listening from, and I hope to see you next time here on Care Live. I've been your podcaster, Kenzie Rock. Have a lovely day or night. Mwah.